Hey there folks, welcome to the first official installment of the Collector's Cargo Hold YouTube channel. As the title of this video suggests, today we'll be doing an in-depth analysis of two officially licensed Star Wars Stormtrooper Shadowtrooper helmets. On the left here is the Hasbro Black Series version, released in 2024, and on the right is the Anovos, or now known as the new Anovo model, released in 2016. Ultimately, the purpose of this deep dive is to compare the helmets against each other and highlight their individual strengths and weaker points. If you've ever considered purchasing either or, hopefully this video could help shape your decision. We will be grading these helmets based on 4 different categories: screen accuracy, durability, availability, and price. We'll be starting off with the screen accuracy category, which is the longest segment of this video and arguably the most important one. Now, in simple terms, screen accuracy refers to the degree in which the helmet accurately reflects the actual film-used props in the Star Wars films and or TV shows. If you're interested in joining certain costuming groups, such as the 501st Legion, screen accuracy is key. Now, most people may not notice at first, but both of these helmets represent distinct Stormtrooper looks that originate from different films. The Hasbro Black Series is modeled after the Stormtrooper helmet design that was first seen in Rogue One, and later reappeared in Solo, The Mandalorian, and Ahsoka. Meanwhile, the Anovos helmet is based on the classic Stormtrooper helmet design from the original trilogy films, more specifically, the helmet that the Stormtroopers wear in Episode 4, A New Hope, and Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Since we never officially see a Shadow Stormtrooper in any live-action Star Wars media, it's difficult to gain the quote-unquote screen accuracy of these helmets, as the only time we see this specific Imperial soldier is in Battlefront 2015. Now, there is a version of the Trooper in the Force Unleashed video game, but it differs too much from the look of these two models, so we will be ignoring it just for the sake of this video. Therefore, we will be aiming to compare these helmets to the model they were based off of, being the Rogue One and the original trilogy model, respectively. First things first, we will be analyzing their individual faceplates, starting with the Hasbro Black Series model. Frankly, up front, they did a hell of a job with this helmet, especially considering that Hasbro is primarily a toy company rather than a movie prop replica company. A fundamental difference between the Rogue One and original Trooper helmet is that the Rogue One helmet is effectively symmetrical, which this model most definitely is. Now, that being said, there is one hardly recognizable detail that Hasbro overlooked, as the film-used helmet props had a little bump on the right eye. That bump makes the helmet faceplate not 100% symmetrical, and yet it was intentionally included, sort of being a callback to the original trilogy helmets, which we will discuss later. Additionally, the lenses were more concave or bubble-like in the films rather than flat. The vocoder, or the black chin detail here on Stormtrooper helmets, is one solid rubber piece. However, the screen-used vocoders actually consisted of individual rubber tubes that were knocked directly against the faceplates. Although the solid rubber piece is not accurate, it frankly imitates the film prop design closely enough. Finally, the tusks of this helmet, aka the mic tips, appear to be one solid molded piece of plastic. The overall shape is solid, pretty damn good, and while not actually metal mesh, the silver coloring of the plastic here gives it a decent metallic look, which is good enough for us, for the sake of screen accuracy. Now let's take a look at the Anovos helmets. For those of you who are unaware, the Anovos company technically no longer exists, as it was rebranded into the new Anovo since 2021. When it comes to overall screen accuracy, they really did a very, very good job, which is to be expected, given the fact that the company was awarded the quote-unquote Star Wars high-end costume and high-end collectibles license according to the Denuo Novo website, and also is expected given the price. More on that later. Unlike the Rogue One helmets, the Stormtrooper helmets created in 1976 were fundamentally asymmetrical because they were hand sculpted, and that is a key detail when replicating the original trilogy Stormtrooper helmet look. One major little detail that we alluded to with the Hasbro helmet is the right eye bump, which is present on all of the Stormtrooper helmets in The New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, which Anovos did a great job replicating here. Other asymmetries on the sculpt of the helmet include a mildly lopsided frown, teeth that vary in size and shape, as well as the left jawline or cheek being a bit larger, a little bit more bulbous than the right side of the helmet. Anovos ultimately did a fantastic job in implementing these specific details on their helmets. Now let's take a look at the size of the helmet. Right off the bat, we can see that the ear sculpts are fundamentally different between the two. The Rogue One model has these little circular indentations with no details on them, and a very specific squared off look here, with a series of vertical lines and a rectangular button right here on the end. Meanwhile, the original trilogy style ears have very visible screws, 1, 2, 3. In this case, they were painted black for the sake of the Shadowtrooper look. For the movies, the screws were just painted white, so they weren't that visible to the naked eye, certainly not in 1977. The ear bumps are a lot less detailed compared to the Rogue One look, as they are a softer sculpt with 4 overall bumps present. Before we take a look at the rest of the details, let's acknowledge how the helmets were put together, because that's ultimately going to influence their look. The Hasbro model is ultimately more of a toy rather than the high-end replica that Anovos put together. Hasbro had divided their helmet into 3 distinct pieces, being made of injection molded plastic, which included the faceplate, the top dome, and then the back of the helmet. Out of the box, this helmet originally came disassembled, and it was up to the customer to put the pieces together. Because of this, we can see a small separation between the faceplate and the ears, which technically should not be visible for the sake of maximizing screen accuracy. The Anovos helmet came pre-built, as it was divided into 4 vacuum-formed pieces, just like the original Trooper helmets. The faceplate, the dome in the back, and then the 2 separate ears. These pieces were individually trimmed and put together with a series of screws, glue, etc. That is why there is an accurate gap between the ears and the faceplate, right here. If you take a look at the helmets in Episode 4, A New Hope, all of the earpieces from helmet to helmet vary significantly. That is because it is notoriously hard to properly trim the earpieces so that they are completely flush with the rest of the helmet, in this case, the faceplate. So, this gap might appear like a flaw, however, it is definitely fitting for the original Stormtrooper look, while the small gap on the Hasbro Black Series version is something that we would rather not see. Taking a look at the tube stripes, Hasbro correctly had their helmet contain 3-dimensional recessed lines for both the tiers here and the tube stripes here. They, however, could have gone the extra mile and have the stripes here be completely hollowed out with a separate section underneath. The blue color reflects the look of the Shadowtrooper and Battlefront 2015, separate from the Anovos look. Now, the Anovos helmet is very simple and straight to the point. I believe both the tiers and tube stripes are decals, either that or they may have been painted on. Regardless, if their decals are painted on, they perfectly mimic the original trilogy look that they were going for. Before we examine the finer details on the back portion of each helmet, let's address the elephant in the room. As we established, Hasbro is a toy company rather than a replica company. Thus, they can make certain decisions that prioritize play features above accuracy, which is totally fair. The speaker and battery pack here are perfect examples of this, as Hasbro clearly wanted to integrate a voice-changing ability for the helmet, which is activated by pushing the right ear buttons. For the life of me, I do not know why they decided to have the battery compartment placed very visibly in the back of the helmet, as opposed to hiding it on the inside, which I find totally feasible. The speaker slots here too, for that matter, could have hypothetically been very easily integrated within the three-dimensional helmet details, such as the tiers, the traps, or even the blue tube stripes that we just covered. Unfortunately, these details do affect the look of the helmet in a very significant manner if you are looking for screen accuracy. But if you're not as interested, not as concerned, perhaps looking to maybe display it against the wall, it will not be obvious and it's not that big of a deal. Moving on. The Hasbro Black Series helmet has a visible gap between the dome and the back structure. This is due to the dome and back being two separate pieces, leading to a somewhat noticeable gap here. For display and casual cosplay, this detail is likely irrelevant. For screen accuracy, however, you'd want to have to fill this in. Taking a look at the Anovos helmet, the dome and back structure is all one vacuum formed piece, which is exactly what we're looking for. Similar to the markings on the faceplates, the traps here are either painted or decals and fit the original style perfectly. Meanwhile, the traps on the Hasbro version are three-dimensional and raised, which is exactly what we're looking for a Rogue One style look. Wrapping up the screen accuracy segments of this analysis, we'll be taking a look at the underside of the helmets. Now, one of the biggest inaccuracies within the Hasbro helmet lies within this chin area. What the helmet completely misses, what is completely absent, is a large chunk of the chin, which is clearly seen on the Anovos model. Hasbro decided to completely remove this portion of the face mask structure, likely to make it easier to put the helmet on for the sake of comfort of the customer. Normally, when wearing Stormtrooper helmets, due to the chin being designed this specific way, you're not able to simply pop the helmet on and off. We sort of have to twist the helmet on, and this becomes very apparent if you take a close look as to how Luke and Han Solo removed their Stormtrooper helmets in A New Hope. Both helmets are meant to have a rubber trim that lines the entire outline of the bottom. This is done perfectly with the Anovos model, while Hasbro has to take a few creative liberties. Given the way that the helmet is meant to be put together, as well as having to accommodate the electronics, the trim is indeed made of rubber, which is what we want. However, it is molded in a very flat way towards the back of the helmet. Here on the face mask, it is done well, but seeing as it is missing a very large portion of the chin, if you'd want to make this more screen accurate, you would have to completely remove the rubber portion here and install a new one. Taking a look at the insides of both helmets, the Anovos version has just some Velcro, so they can put in some helmet padding if you desires, a bit of foam on either side so as that the screw ends of the ears don't poke you, and then the lenses are also lined with foam for the sake of comfort for the individual. Taking a look at the frown, there is a little bit of plastic mesh placed behind to help hide the face of an individual. You can also see a sort of wonky asymmetrical look to the base of the helmet, which is part of the charming asymmetrical design of the original trilogy Stormtrooper helmet, which is just fine and accurate for the Anovos model. The inside of the Black Series helmet is also fairly simple and straight to the point. You have a sort of hard hat style rubber bands on the inside, if you will. If you have a large bulbous head like these will be extraordinarily uncomfortable to use. What I would suggest is to completely remove them the larger your head is. But you have a smaller head, or for a child, this is perfect to keep it locked into position. You have some screws on the inside for the electronics. When we take a look at the front here, plastic chrome lenses that look great from the outside and completely cover the visitor's eyes. Same thing with the Anovos helmet. Some black plastic portion here to cover the gaps in the teeth, and a little nose bridge right here. Most importantly also, we have a little tiny microphone that can be extended towards your mouth to use the voice changing ability of the helmet, which we will not be displaying in this video. However, worry not, you are seriously not missing much. The voice change ability is extraordinarily hit or miss, with 90% of the time most people not even being able to tell that there is a voice changing ability. The overall rating for the screen accuracy element of the Hasbro helmet, I would give it a very solid 3.95 out of 5. It really does a great job of replicating the overall Rogue One look, but has a few glaring inaccuracies. If you're interested in 501st approval, this helmet would not be approvable for the Shadowtrooper look. Not only because of the recessed chin or visible speakers, etc., but simply because it is not based on the original trilogy Stormtrooper look. For casual cosplaying, costuming, or display, however, you seriously cannot go wrong with the Hasbro Black Series look. The overall rating for the Anovos model, I give it a very strong 4.85 out of 5. It is ultimately very well made in my opinion, and highly accurate to its source. What doesn't give Anovos a perfect score is that some of the molded details are a bit too sharp compared to the screen-used helmet, such as the frown, the teeth, and the eyes. I frankly find that it gives this helmet a unique sort of charm, although some folks online aren't the biggest fans. Furthermore, if you're a real stickler for accuracy, the third screw on the right ear is hidden underneath the rubber trim. So if you really want to go hard or go home on the original Stormtrooper look, you'd have to install a new screw a little bit higher up so they can be visible just like it is on the screen. On to the next segment of this video, being the durability of the helmets. Fundamentally different for both of them. The Hasbro helmet appears to be injection molded, while the Anovos helmet is vacuum formed. Depending on what you want, one helmet might be more suited to you than the other. The vacuum formed pieces on the Anovos version helps increase the accuracy of the helmet, as it quite literally is the same method in which the original helmets back in 1976 were created. However, it does decrease the durability of the helmet significantly. The vacuum formed Anovos helmet is very light, for better or for worse, and also it can quite easily bend with just a little bit of pressure. This can lead it to succumb quite easily to cracks over time. And seeing that it is vacuum formed ABS plastic, it could also warp or melt under heat. Hasbro, on the other hand, being injection molded plastic, is very durable. You will not easily bend this plastic as opposed to the Anovos helmet. This is very unlikely to warp under heat unless you shove it in the oven, and will likely keep its structure a little bit better over time. You could probably beat this one up a little bit more than the Anovos helmet. Now, both of these helmets, however, are absolute fingerprint, dust, and scratch magnets. You can see my Hasbro helmet here is a little bit beat up on the top due to it being worn a few times, and the Anovos helmet, although it is essentially brand new coming out of the box, already has a few scratches on the domes. There's a reason why I'm wearing these Stormtrooper style gloves, not only because they look super cool, but also I do not want to put too many fingerprints on the lovely glossy black look that both of these helmets have. So if you intend on either costuming with them or putting them on display, expect to kind of have to put in some time to polish them up when they eventually get real dusty, have plenty of scratches on them, XYZ. Ultimately, durability matters, but it also depends on what you want. For casual cosplaying, display, or trooping regularly with the 501st. For casual costuming, Hasbro Black Series helmet, can't go wrong, very solid, but if you really want to troop with a 501st Legion, you're going to want to have to take extra care of your Anovos helmet. For scores, I'd give Hasbro Black Series a solid 4.75 out of 5. And the Anovos helmet, I'll give it a 3 for durability. On to the current availability of both helmets. Very simple, very straight to the point. The Hasbro Black Series version is still commercially available. Although it is labeled as a GameStop exclusive, it can still be found on Amazon as well as other online sites. It regularly appears on eBay. For availability score, we'll give it an easy 5 out of 5. Doesn't get any better than this. The Anovos version becomes a little bit tricky, as it is no longer in production and has not been for a long time. Your best chance of acquiring this helmet is on secondhand sites such as eBay, Facebook Marketplace, etc. Due to that fact, it gets a very simple and small score of 2 out of 5 for availability. Let's conclude our final segment of the video with the price of both helmets. The Hasbro Black Series version is $99.99 or 100 USD at GameStop, and it is currently available for $140 on Amazon.com. Compared to other commercially available quote-unquote replica Star Wars helmets, this price really is as good as it's going to get for a very, very solid piece. $100, pretty damn accurate look. I'd give it a very solid 4.5 out of 5 for the pricing category. The Anovos helmet, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. At the time, it retailed for $250 according to the BigBadToyStore.com. Nowadays, the new Anovos Shadowtrooper helmet, which is fundamentally the same structure and mold as this helmet, goes for $400 on their official site. On eBay, it seems like there is only one available listing for the Anovos Shadowtrooper helmet in my region, and the seller wants to get $600 for it, which I frankly think is absurd. All that being taken into consideration, I'd give the Anovos Shadowtrooper helmet a 3 out of 5 in the pricing category. At the end of the day, which helmet is your best bang for your buck? Which one has the best value? The value of the helmet is subjective. It will always depend on your budget and how many aspects such as screen accuracy mean to you and what you aim to use it for. If you're interested in a very highly accurate model such as the Anovos version, you're going to end up paying more no matter what. The question is that worth it for you? For those of you who might be interested in 501st Legion approval, for example, you're not likely going to be able to cheap out. Maybe even $100, such as a Black Series version, it's a bit too expensive in your eyes, which is totally fair. In that case, you'll want to keep an eye out for discounts online, which Amazon always offers, GameStop occasionally does, and other sites as well as second-hand listings on eBay. The Shadowtrooper, on average, goes for around maybe as low as $60, as high as $80 second-hand, which is significantly cheaper than the price at retail. That's going to be it for our review and comparison of these two officially licensed Star Wars Shadowtrooper helmets. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you the type of person who thinks a retail price of $250 is reasonable for a helmet of this quality? Or do you even find the $100 price for the Hasbro version to be too steep? Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.